because otherwise you might just look back in years to come, and that's why I'm so glad that when the opportunity to do something different after that employed life came along, I'm so glad that I didn't just rush back. Something told me to try something else, and now here we are, doing voiceover, running a networking group, doing podcasts with lots of amazing people, and I just don't want him to regret not doing stuff, even if it means him living out of a van, being a more successful musician than I was. I will fully endorse that, even if he's sponging off of mum and dad for a while, because I want him to experience things that other people might not have the chance to.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to Tom Meets Interesting People. This is the podcast where I meet everybody from voice actors to nuclear engineers to talk about their projects and their processes. And before I introduce my guest today, this is a very, very special episode because, like Cilla Black quitting Blind Date, this is the last episode of the series. However, I will be coming back, unlike Cilla Black. Next week is my graduation, so I'm no longer an undergrad that's poor and starving. I am now just somebody that's poor and starving. But we've got a very, very special episode lined up for you today, and I think it's something that you'll enjoy, and it's almost poetic that the first episode of this season kicked off with a voice actor, Ashley Casey Tyrell, who's also my younger sibling, and this season is going to end with a voice actor. Martin Whiskin started his career a little bit more corporate and a little bit less creative than voiceover. He worked as a data manager for 20 years while trying to be, in his words, a rock star, and I think we all just kind of want to be a rock star. And sadly, he was made redundant. So he started looking at the different skills that he built up over the years in photography, in design, in videos to see if any of them could be monetized. And I've been there too. They couldn't. What was good enough for punk bands wasn't good enough to sell to businesses. But in a roundabout way, this led him over to voice acting. Something that he never had any plans to do, but something that he absolutely loves. And you can hear his voices on different campaigns for Lego, the RAF, Mercedes, NHS and BMW. And I suspect the moment he says hello, you're going to be like, I know that voice. Martin, the warmest welcome to the show. How are we doing?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, very good, thank you. I was going to put on a voice then so nobody would recognise who I was. And they might not, but if they do, that's lovely as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I reckon they would. So, I mentioned there in your intro that before you became a voice actor, you actually I've got to ask first before I go any further, what do you prefer? Is it voice actor, voiceover artist?
I think it's really, a lot of people use it interchangeably. I just say on my business card it says Martin Whiskin voiceover, and I sort of use it as that's a service I provide. I've always used voiceover artist, but a lot of people will say no, it's actor because you're acting. No matter what it is you're doing, you're acting. So just whatever makes you feel happy.
Fair dues. So before you became a voiceover artist, as I mentioned in the intro, you had a very, very different job as a data manager. And I kind of hinted at it there, but how did you make that jump?
So I was made redundant in 2018, but it was on the cards for a couple of years. And the reason was because GDPR was rearing its rumoured head. And our bosses in our industry said, don't worry about it. If that comes in, too many people will lose their jobs. So it's not going to happen. Don't panic. And then for 2 years, we were saying, should we put some plans in place just in case it does come in? And our bosses said, no, don't worry, it won't. And then, of course, it did come in and we did lose our jobs as predicted. So I was left with a bit of money and a milestone birthday coming up. I was about to turn 40. I wasn't going to mention it then, but I was about to turn 40. I'm not embarrassed about that.
You don't look it either. You don't look it. You barely look over 25.
I thought he was going to say, you barely look over 50.
Thank you.
But Yeah, so I had sort of a bit of time because I'd been there for a while, so I had a little pot of money to consider my options. And I thought I could run straight back to an office and have that as a buffer, but where's the fun in that? So I got to the point after a couple of months thinking, right, what can I do that's not database management? And I was thinking back to my time in bands, like you said, and I'd picked up skills in photography, a bit of video work. I'd done web design and posters and logos and that sort of stuff. And exactly as you said, I soon realised that there were many better people out there already doing all of that stuff. And I thought it's going to be too difficult to sell my skills on that level without extensive training. So I must have been looking for, well, I'm sorry, go back a bit. I saw my recording gear that I had left over from my time in bands, and I must have been looking online for new microphones, new speakers and that sort of thing, thinking, oh, maybe I could record some singers or some acoustic acts in my house, that sort of thing. So I was going to buy lots of gear, getting quickly far too far ahead of myself. And then as Facebook does, it tracks you wherever you go. So I was on Facebook one day and was getting adverts for microphones, speakers and all this sort of stuff that I'd been looking at. But one of the adverts the only advert actually that stood out was record your own voiceovers from home. And I thought, well, I've got the gear. I can speak. I just need to be taught how to speak. And I went from there. It was a mentoring and training course with some top industry professionals. The guy who used to do the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent voiceovers was the boss there. So I met him a couple of times and did some training with him. And I thought, if it doesn't work, I'll go back to an office. If it works, happy days. And then, fortunately, it ended up working after a lot of hard work.
I've got to ask now, the guy who does the voiceover, the Britain's Got Talent artist, does he talk like that all the time? Like, does he project, like he's at the checkout and he's just like, he's at the self-service, he's like, I would like some assistance. He has such a distinctive voice, doesn't he?
Well, unfortunately not. No, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
He totally should do that. It's totally should just make that a bunch of viral videos. And something that I have noticed with all the creatives that I've interviewed in this podcast and that I've met prior to doing this podcast as well, is that a lot of people have gone into their creative field because of being made redundant or because they didn't have that choice almost.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've been through the same thing the past year or so. I've been talking to a lot of creatives since starting a networking group that I run. I think we might talk a bit about later on, but a lot of people have said, that was what gave me the push to try it, because I guess they have a little bit more time if they lose their job to try something. And it's also that thing about risk, I guess, isn't it? When you're in a full-time job and you're getting that check every month, that why would you just quit and try doing something that you've never done before? But yeah, I'd always had a creativity running through me, but never really thought about it. Never really considered that you could do something and get paid for it, being creative. But you're right, I think there's a lot of people stuck in jobs and dreaming of a better way. And I think the message there is a better way. Yeah. Take the leap. Yeah, definitely. That's how this podcast got started. That's how my business that I run. So because of COVID, I remember I had a similar kind of thing. All my work dried up the week COVID hit in that March 2020, and I was like, I had to do something. So I totally relate. I totally get it. And from what I read, sort of like about you on your website, and from what you've sent me over as well, and from our emails, you've definitely picked up a lot of skills along the way that are now serving you really well in voice acting. So can you sort of expand on them? Like, what skills do you currently use? Yeah, and it's something I didn't even realise it had happened until I was speaking to a client last year, I think. And I was like, all those years I spent in bands, nearly 20 years, trying to make it as a rock star, and ultimately it was all for nothing. And he said, but was it though? And we sort of thought about it a lot deeper. And obviously voiceover is running a business, and when you're in a band, a lot of people will realise quickly that soon becomes like running a business, because you have to talk to bookers, promoters, agents, trying to get these shows, trying to get paid for these shows. You have to try and get people to these shows, to listen to your stuff. self-promotion. So there's that huge side of marketing and meeting people that you do in a band that has paid off now, because I'm, you know, more confident in talking to businesses and people that I've never met before. And another one would be the huge undertaking of admin. There's a lot of admin on when you're trying to do music, and there's a lot of admin in business as well. In terms of actual voiceover skills, that's a tough one. Because I'd never done it before, never considered it. The closest thing would be singing or screaming into a microphone on stage, or doing a bit on radio. But I'd never learned how to interpret a script or anything like that. But I have always enjoyed just writing lyrics and words and things like that. So there are links to it. But most of the skills that I built up over the years were more on the business side of being a self-employed.
Yeah, fair dues. And they've served you well, because you could almost hit the ground running and focus on learning the craft of voiceover and voice acting, as opposed to also learning the admin stuff at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. There was a lot of things that I actually carried over from my last employed job, in terms of keeping records of all the work that I do. I've got an Excel sheet that I built at this old company that I've adapted it now for me, obviously, but where it, I have to input all my jobs on there and how much they are, and it generates invoices and all. So that's my data sort of geeky side coming out in my business, where I can have all these automated systems in the background, leaving me to concentrate more on the the voicing side.
So now you've got the admin stuff all sorted, and I totally relate to just having so much admin to do. It's like, I don't want to do this admin, I want to do the fun stuff.
Yes.
You've now, let's say for example, you've just been given a role, a job. What do you refer to them as? Do you refer to them as jobs, or?
Oh, there's lots of different ways. I had I think job, I would normally say. I got a job, or I got a some people call it a gig. Got a gig coming, got a script come in, or I got a role, landed a role, won an audition. Lots of different.
Yeah, fair dues. Let's say a new job comes in, a new script comes in. What's your steps when you first sort of receive that, to sort of like record and prepare that recording?
Okay, so the first thing I would do would be to see what the directions are from the client, or from whoever. I'm not always dealing with the end client. It could be just the audio producer. So see what their directions are, see how they want it said, and if they haven't given any directions, because quite often they don't, I might go back to them and find out. But quite often I will look at the script, work out what it's all about, who's it for, what are they trying to say. So the first real bulk of it is, I guess, analysing the script, working out how it should be spoken, because you can't use one voice for all. It's not a straight out of the box thing 99 times out of 100. You have to tailor your voice, your tone, your emotion, your inflections, pace, how close to the microphone, all that sort of thing, so that the message is delivered in the right way to the audience. So the first step is like analysing the script, who it's for, who am I in that script, because I should never be playing me. I'm always representing the company that it's for, or playing a part of someone in a a drama or something like that. And then after that, my recording gear is always set up and ready, so I will just warm up for 10 or 15 minutes and then jump into the vocal booth and get recording. From there, then a bit of editing if it's needed, and then off it goes. Yeah.
I think also you mentioned mic technique there as well, and that's something that I've been learning sort of from this podcast. Now, I'll admit, I'm a novice, and maybe the first episodes were recorded with this headset that I'm wearing as opposed to the mic that I'm talking into. But that definitely I'm still experimenting kind of with that. So what would you advise for maybe, let's say, a podcaster or a beginner voice actor? They've got their mic in front of them.
Yep.
What's best practice?
The first thing I will say is don't talk directly into the microphone, because the mics that voice actors use are quite sensitive for obvious reasons. You want to be able to pick up whispers, but also they need to manage loud stuff as well. So they pick up everything. So if you're talking directly into the microphone, they're more likely going to pick up the P noises, B noises, lots of breath. So you can probably see it on the camera here. Listeners, you won't be able to see this, but my microphone is angled slightly away from my mouth. So it still picks up all the volume, but there's very little like what's called a plosive noise, where the air shoots straight into the microphone. So that's best avoided. And you can also avoid that by using a pop shield as well, which sits in front of the microphone and just disperses the air or thins it out so that there's not as much power hitting the front there. Hands, sort of a hand span away from the microphone generally is a good distance. If you're doing something that's maybe a bit softer, a bit more considered, like a piece of poetry, or I don't know, something for a bed where you're talking as if you're talking to someone who's about to go to sleep, you would come in really close to the microphone so that it picks up some chest sound, and you sound nice and soft and lovely. And yeah, if you're shouting, get further away from the microphone, but also turn the gain down. So there's a lot of things that are probably quite obvious, but yeah, it's just practice. Yeah, lots of different messing about with it and just seeing what works.
And it's something I've been enjoying as well, just trying to teach myself just to go about this. So I hope that's helpful to somebody and fellow podcasters who are listening and starting voice actors as well. You also mentioned when you're talking about directions and the directions you got, and sometimes you don't get the directions that you're hoping for. So what would be, in your ideal world, what directions would you love from a client?
Oh, there's lots of things I can say about this topic. So quite often you will get a direction that you just look at it and you just can't, your brain just can't work it out. So it'll be and this is an extreme version, but it'll say, can you sound happy but sad? And you'll think, happy but sad. Can you sound energetic but relaxed? And you think, and you know, sometimes you get completely contrasting words in there, which it was very, very tricky to navigate sometimes. And the other one that is also tricky is when they say, can you do it exactly like this voice in this video? And I think, well, why don't you ask that voice to do it for you rather than coming to me, because I'm not that voice. You know, you can change your voice somewhat, but you can't. I'm not an impressionist, you know. So the ideal sort of direction would be, I guess, a general sort of tone that they need. So do they want it to sound bright? Do they need it to sound lively? Or do you need it just like someone who's just talking to you? But you don't want them to go into too much detail, because the problem there that might arise is that I focus so much on the detail that I don't play with it enough. And the point of being able to play with the words and the sentences is that you make it sound more human. You don't want to be so rigid. So I think a couple of sentences describing their ideas for it, but quite often what they envisage is the perfect tone for it. Might not work with the music, you know. So quite often I will say, well, can I hear the music first? And if they've said, like, be really energetic, I had one a couple of weeks ago. It's right, they want it really lively, really energetic, and I heard the music and it was really calm and laid back, so it just wouldn't work with it. It would sound just over the top. There's lots of different ways people can give directions, but I think brief is the way forward. Yeah,
fair dues. And I'm totally just going to extract that bit now as part of our promo stuff.
Lovely.
It's going to be absolutely epic. You're just studying my podcast for me now, so I suspect I'll get an invoice very soon. So I'm kind of curious now, how long do these sort of jobs take? Are they sort of one and done things? Are they a long period of time? What's it kind of like?
To be honest, it can vary. So if I get a script that's like a short, say a 30-second radio ad, I could be, if it's a live session, I might be in the box with the producer on the line for 10-15 minutes, just making sure they've got enough takes to, you know, so that they're happy and the client can pick and choose little bits. So you're not doing the same read 5 or 6 times. You will vary it so they can pick the best bits from, you know, and chop it up if they need to and that sort of thing. So that could be, you know, quarter of an hour and it's done. If I'm editing that myself. So if no one's on the line, if I'm doing it and producing for someone, I'll probably spend a bit longer. You know, I might be in there for half an hour, just until I'm happy with it. I want, you know, I'm not a perfectionist, but I want to make sure it's the best that I can do to please the client. But when it's a longer job, it's tricky. See, I do one that's about 30 minutes worth of reading. If you don't make any mistakes, if you don't have any drinks, if you don't go to toilet, you know, that's one of the I don't want to say a downside, but one of the things about voiceover art is you're constantly drinking water, so you probably go to the toilet twice as many times as everyone else. So yeah, if it's a half-hour script, I might be in the box for an hour. When, you know, I make a few mistakes, go back, record them, have drinks, have a couple of minutes break here and there, so I'll be recording for an hour. And then the editing for that would be, I always give myself double the amount of time, so half an hour of voice is an hour of editing. So it really depends on length of job, how many takes the client might want, and actually that's one of the good things about voiceover is every job is different. Yeah, you know, no matter what it is.
Yeah. So I imagine you've had sort of those jobs that have been, you've had those really short jobs, and I imagine you've had the really weird ones, and you've had your favourites. So what's your favourite job that you've done?
I had to think about this before we came on, and it's quite difficult because with voiceover work, and well, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but certainly with me, I tend to just forget what the jobs are day to day because you don't memorize the script, you just read it as you're going, and then that's it, move on to the next one. But I think the high point, or certainly the first high point I got to was when I had a TV ad for Lego. It was more like a promo, and mainly because my son loves Lego, and I could say to my family, I'm on the telly, which I think is a lot of kids' dreams. But I say, look, Mum, I'm on the telly. But yeah, it was a promo for Lego that was it was Lego Technic for some new cars that they had coming out, and the real versions of those cars were racing in the 24-hour Le Mans. Yeah. And it was the promo was in between all the adverts of the 24-hour Le Mans. And that was, so I think that's probably my favourite one. And that was a 6-second script. 6 seconds.
Wow, 6 seconds.
Yeah. Very short job. I think it was Lego Technic sponsors the 24-hour Le Mans. Yes, I think it's under 10 words. That wasn't the way I did it, by the way. I was just trying to remember.
Yeah, I was going to say.
that was terrible.
Yes. Just for potential clients, Martin doesn't mumble his scripts unless you ask him to. There we go.
Yeah.
So we've talked a bit about your processes there of being a voiceover artist and sort of like how you help the clients and how the clients can help you. But I imagine there are definitely benefits to using a voiceover client over sort of recording things yourself.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I always mention, and I always give the example of if you're creating something for promoting yourself, like a marketing video for yourself, and you think, oh, I'll do the talking because it's me, I'm the company, you know, I run that company, so it makes sense. You know, in some instances it does make sense, but it would be better if you were sat down being on an interview as opposed to trying to do a voiceover. And that's, you know, I'm not trying to offend anyone there by saying you're not a trained voiceover, but you want people to be engaged in the video. But the first thing is, I would say, the quality of the actual audio itself. So forget the voice at all. But when people think, I'll do my own voiceover for that, the issue is that they're probably recording in a room that's not treated. They might not even have a very good microphone. They will have lots of background noise from computers, maybe the fridge in the room next to them, anything like that, cars going past. And it's an interesting thing that people seem to be a lot more forgiving of badly filmed footage than they are of badly recorded audio. And it's sometimes on a subconscious level, so they might not realise why, when they're watching something, they might not realise why they're not enjoying it, but it's probably the audio. They might watch it and think, oh, that's something not quite, you know, something feels not quite right, and quite often it's because the audio is bad quality. yeah, so there's that. Before that was even before talking about the voice is the quality of the audio. You know, you'll get a pristine broadcast quality piece of audio recorded in a quite often a soundproof environment, so there will never be any other noise other than the voice. A couple of things that will help the actual brand itself will be, let's take a local radio, for example. Lots of ads on there are just recorded by the DJs or the staff that work in there. If you get a voiceover artist to do your local radio ad for you, that will stand out because it will sound so much better than ones recorded, you know, not by people who have. That's on a very sort of base level. And of course, there are some DJs out there who do very good voiceovers. I'm not here to offend. Just get that straight.
Go offend. Give us some controversy. Get my Twitter followers up. Let's start like a Twitter storm because of this.
Did you hear this voiceover? He's awful. He's horrible. I mean, all publicity is good publicity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they say. But also, a voice. If you start to work with a voiceover artist and use them for lots of different things, or even just a few things, it can start to give your company a human identity, as opposed to like a graphical representation of, you know, a logo and branding, colours, that sort of thing. It can start to really connect more with people because they can hear a voice of the company. And I think the example I like to give, for me it's the most obvious one, is the guy who does the McDonald's adverts. He's very down to earth, very relatable sounding, and to me that's made McDonald's less than this huge corporation that no one knows anything about. It's got an identity now. It's just a normal guy talking about McDonald's. But the other thing about that, actually, shut me up at any point if you need to.
Go. Please keep going.
The other thing is sometimes about if you do have a voice that becomes really recognisable, like the McDonald's one. I phoned up, I think it was Wix I phoned up a few months ago, and there was an automated message was the first thing I heard, which is fine, but it was the McDonald's guy. It was his voice on there, and I thought, hang on, and it was that thing I said about perhaps not realising what was wrong with a piece of audio. There's nothing wrong with the audio, but my brain was saying, oh, what's happening here? That's the McDonald's guy on the Wix phone line. This isn't right. And so yeah, you have to be careful sometimes with getting your message across, and, you know, I guess not confusing it with anyone else's.
And I think a couple of things I want to pick up on there as well. You mentioned we're talking sort of how a voiceover artist can pick up on exactly the message a company wants to put across. Am I right in thinking that? And exactly what is needed to sell either that product or that service.
Yeah, I was going to say, so comparing it to if someone in-house wants to record their own voiceover, it runs the risk of sounding like they're reading off of a page. Yeah. Because they will be reading off of a page. You know, that's the very essence of voiceover. You're reading words that are written on a page. And the risk of someone in-house doing it, of course, is that they just sound like very robotic, no emotion, because they're concentrating on reading the words, and that's what they're doing. Whereas a voiceover artist, yes, they are reading, but the way that they read, it doesn't sound like they're just reading off of a page. And that's one of the skills that you have to learn right at the beginning, is how to not sound like it's being read. And one of the tricks there is to try and read ahead with your eyes. So you're further, I always muddle this up, but your eyes are further along the line than your mouth is, if that makes sense. Yeah. And what that does is it prepares your brain for the upcoming words. So you know how they should be spoken. So they're in your head already before they come out of your mouth. Whereas if you don't know that trick or haven't practiced it, then you're literally looking at the single individual words as you read them, and it can sound a bit like this. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what the question was.
No worries. So have I. Good. Oh God, what did I talk about? Because you mentioned training your brain, and this is the first time my degree is actually going to be useful, because in neuroscience there are two parts of our brain. One is responsible for reading, one is responsible for speaking, and they're on totally separate ends of the brain.
That's interesting.
The Winnicke's area and the Broca's area. Like, I think Bronca is sort of towards the front and Winnicke's sort of towards the back. I can't remember which one does which. Shows you how much attention I paid in my lectures. So there you go. Something else I was also really interested about, and I keep hearing this phrase, and I don't quite understand what it means, so hopefully you can shed some light on it, and you mentioned it too, is make sure you're in a treated room.
Yeah. So a treated room would mean, I think it's the technical term is maybe acoustically treated. So if you imagine you're standing in a room that's just 4 walls, maybe you've got a light in there so that we know what's happening in there.
Yeah.
And you talk. If you're just say we're standing in the middle, the noise moves around the room. It just bounces off all the walls, the ceiling, the floor. You're just in a box basically, and what's called reflect. The sound reflects off of all the surfaces, and in the corners as well. It can gather and make it boomier and all that sort of stuff. So when you start to treat a room, what you're looking to do is minimize the amount of reflections that are happening, so that you don't get the what some people call echo or reverb or reflections in the voice. And you'll hear that in a lot of self-produced videos that people make, because their room just is a room. You know, why would they need to treat it? They're not trying to record professional audio. But you can do things like, you've probably seen the grey foam pads that you can stick to the walls, and they're rigid like that, so the sound sort of goes in and can't bounce out of those gaps, and if it does, it's all bouncing at angles, so it just ends up diffusing. Or you can put lots of carpet on the floor, rugs on sofas and that sort of thing. Anything that absorbs, lots of soft furnishings, anything that will absorb those reflections. You're looking to get rid of hard, flat surfaces. So treating a room or treating a space is just looking to either stop the reflections and also reduce sound ingress, like coming from windows and doors, and you don't want sound to come in basically as well.
I'm just hoping my dog doesn't find someone outside to bark at. But that foam stuff you mentioned, is that what you've got behind you, the black stuff?
No, this actually is what's called, I normally have it folded out properly, that's just half, what you can see there is half of it. It's an acoustic blanket, it's called. They do acoustic curtains as well, and they're pretty much the same thing. And it's a really thick piece of, like, what would you call it? Well, I guess material, but it weighs 5 kilograms for a curtain or a blanket that's quite heavy. And it does the same thing. It just, the reason I've got it behind me is when I'm editing, my speakers used to hit the plain wall behind me and just come straight back, and it would sound really strange. You'd be hearing like this, I can't really describe it. It was just a very odd noise. So I've got the acoustic blankets behind me, and it just stops that bounce. The audio hitting the wall just stops dead there now. Which means I can edit in. I was going to say edit in peace, but that doesn't make sense because I'm obviously listening to stuff. But editing without reflection. They're good. I was going to advertise them, but maybe I shouldn't. Are we allowed to advertise?
We can advertise a little bit. I can. I was going to ask, is there any products you'd recommend on like sort of either a budget or if you wanted to spend a bit of money?
Well, the acoustic blankets are really good for, and actually people build vocal booths out of these. They put them on poles and just get inside them. And they're Vocal Booth to Go is the website, and I think they're about 60 quid each. They're 6 foot wide, 6 foot tall, I think, and maybe even taller than that. And and 5 kilograms a piece. They really do a good job. In terms of a microphone on a budget, it's quite an entry level microphone. But is used by lots and lots and lots of professionals. It's a Rode NT1A, and I think it's about 120 quid. And it's what I'm using here for. I've got a different one for recording, but I use this one for meetings, and they're so robust and such good quality for the price. You can buy a microphone for 10 grand, but for 120 quid you can't really complain.
That's one of the things as well, getting a decent mic. I went for a Zoom H2, really old model, but it's like I used to use these when I was in journalism club way back when I was 16 years old, and they still work to this day, which I absolutely adore. Like, this is 2008 this came out, still going strong. But making that jump to getting a decent mic from my first 2 episodes that were recorded with the headset to this is just like the best investment that I made, and I'm imagining it's also a great investment that you made for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually really lucky because when I used to record demos for the band, I had this microphone. So the microphone that I'm using now, I think I probably had about 15 years.
Yeah.
And they still do this model, like you said. You know, a lot of microphones just last.
Yeah.
And that probably cost me £10 a year, that microphone, which is nothing.
Yeah.
I did invest a bit more in a microphone for recording, just because of how my voice sounds. These microphones, the Rode is quite bright, so you can tend to hear a lot of tss noises. The microphone I've got, there's less tss noises when I'm talking, like S's and things like that.
So reading between the lines, is there like, I'm probably barking up the wrong tree, but is there like different mics designed for like different kinds of voices?
Yeah, and it's all a case of trying out the mics, really. Which I understand is quite difficult because I don't think there's I'm yet to find a place where I can go and try lots of condenser microphones in a quiet environment just to see if I like one, and then I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of different mics have different what would you call it? I guess they pick up better on different qualities of the voice. So some will be better for deep voices, some will be better for higher voices or for female voices. And like I said, yeah, this Rode is a really good microphone for singing as well, actually. Mm-hmm. But it does favour the high end. So if you do have a sibilant voice, so if you say lots of S's in your speaking, it does have a tendency to really enhance those S's, which can get quite harsh to listen to. Yeah. And the microphone I've got now, a Sennheiser Mark IV, isn't as harsh on those S's, so I don't have to worry about anything in processing now, in editing to do with that. I just let it go and it's fine.
Thank you so much for telling me all about like the equipment and just letting me be nosy into your
fine.
Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
Now, earlier on we talked about working with businesses, and I also know something that you really, really care about and that you're a great believer in is networking and building a network to help your connections start relationships with each other. So introduce us to that. Tell us about your network.
It really came about during the first lockdown, I think. I'd done a bit of networking when I started my business, been to like a networking event where there was lots of business people there all talking about business, and I've been to 2 or 3 of them, and I thought, I hate doing these. This is horrible. This is so far out of my comfort zone, because at that point I was still in like the corporate sort of mindset where it was me against the world, or at the time the company against the world, everyone fighting for the same job. So, and I'd never had to talk to clients because I was just a cog in the piece at this company. But when the first lockdown came, I saw lots of people talking about doing online networking on something called Zoom, and I thought, well, what's that? That sounds strange. The rest is history. Yeah, and I thought, well, it's not going to catch on. COVID's not going to last for long. Both of those were wrong, of course, because COVID's still around, and online networking is huge still. So I thought, I'll give it a go. And when I first started going along to meetings, I felt really bad because everyone else in those meetings already had lots of connections and relationships with businesses. So I was going in saying, can you connect me with any videographers that you know? And they would send me their videographers. Can I help you in any way? No, I can't, because I don't know anyone yet. And because I was still relatively new to business and networking, I couldn't do anything for them. I just had to bide my time. And that's the thing about networking, is that it's a slow burn, and you just have to build and build. So over the next 2 years, I did hundreds and hundreds of networking events online, and got to a place where I've got a huge connection base. I've got some very trusted people that I will, if someone says to me, do you know anyone who does wills? Yes, I do. I've got someone who I know is really good at it, and I'll always push them towards her. And the same for things like photography. Do you know a photographer? Yes, I do. I've got some people over here that can do it. Obviously not everyone's always suited to that type of photography, for example. But that's for the end client to decide who's best for them visually. Getting off track, but yeah, so I'd built up this nice connection base and some trusted partners, but I thought personally, and I love all types of networking. I've met great businesses across every discipline, but I thought I need to be networking with more people directly with what related to what I do. So I would be going into events asking accountants, mortgage brokers, financial advisors, estate agents, and saying, oh, do you know any videographers? And they might do, but quite often they wouldn't. So I needed to network with videographers to cut down on my networking time, be more efficient, speak to the people that I need to speak to faster. So I thought, right, why don't I have a look for a networking group that's got videographers in it, or just lots of creative people making music, websites, graphic design, all that sort of thing. But for the life of me, I could not find one. I searched for so long, and it got to the point where I started asking some videographers that I'd worked with, saying, do you know of anything like that? No. And the last person to respond to me said no, so let's start one. And I thought, well, there you go. So we started up a networking group called the Creative Collective, and the whole idea behind it, and because I've seen it happen in other networking groups, is to support, to give people advice if they need it, and just really build those relationships with people, and then the business will happen afterwards. The business to us hasn't been forgotten about, but it's not the focus. We understand that you need to know someone and like someone and get on with someone well before you should even consider doing business with them. They might pay you lots of money, but if they're horrible, you don't want to work with them. It'll be bad. So yeah, and as a byproduct of the Creative Collective, I've really made an effort this year to put people together that I think will work well together. So starting relationships off with people, and I think that's really important, because I want people that I know are good at what they do to do more good stuff. And if I can put them with someone else who does good stuff, win-win for everybody. And the feeling of putting people together to do stuff is so rewarding. It's sometimes even more rewarding than doing a good piece of work for myself. I just like seeing, or people coming back and saying, oh, thanks so much for putting me in touch with blah blah blah, we did this together and it was great. It's so I hope there's some useful information in there. I felt like I was talking for hours.
No, please talk for hours, because that gives me more to work with. And I hardly ever cut down the episodes anyway. Like I might cut out the odd or R, or like whenever I embarrass myself. But I tend not to cut down a huge amount. But you hit on something really, really important there, and I totally agree with you. Relationships in business are one of the most important things. And every single bit of sensible business advice that I have received and consumed, including my obsession with a diary of a CEO, Steve, please invite me on, please, is that those relationships can help make a business. Those connections can really help you find those new clients, reach out to the people who are going to work with you and are going to work with your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I've met people on networking 2 years ago that I've chatted to, weekly or at least fortnightly for those couple of years, and we're friends now. But friends who sometimes, when the opportunity arises, actually do jobs together as well. There's one example of her name is Alex, and she's a videographer, and she runs Vavavoom Videos. Great name. So we knew each other for quite a while before we did any work together. Then I did a voiceover for a job for her. Then I got her to make a video for me when I needed it. And then bizarrely, I've been a photography assistant on her video shoots on occasion as well. And it's nice to know that there's people around you, not just me, not just using that example, that you can call on and rely on at the drop of a hat to do stuff, and that you trust. You don't want, and this highlights it, I think, is one of the best things that I've found from doing lots of networking is I don't have to use Google to find a service anymore. I know these people and I know that they're good already. I don't have to rely on some reviews online that may or may not be genuine.
Yeah. And it's like sort of as well, like if I'm even not talking about business, if I'm looking for someone to do work around the house for whatever reason, I'm more likely to ask my friends and my family, oh, who do you know that's good for that?
Yes.
as opposed to relying on those Google reviews, which, yeah, they can be. Yeah. Talking of reviews, please don't forget to rate this show on Good Pods, because we're in the top 100 of the indie documentary charts, and we are precariously close to the 90s, and I want to be higher. I want to be higher. It's so scary being that low.
It's coming, Tom, but you'll get there. In fact, top 10, aim high.
Yeah, let's do it. Top 10. So remind us the name of the group. It is the Creative Collective.
The Creative Collective Networking.co.uk.
The Creative Collective Networking.co.uk. And of course, we can also find you elsewhere online. You've got your own website for your voiceover work, I believe.
Yes, it's just my name, which is martinwhiskin.co.uk, and that's WHISKIN.
Epic. At the intro, I nearly mispronounced your name. Like,
what was you going to say?
I might re-record my intro slightly, just so it doesn't sound like I went Martin Whiskin.
As long as it wasn't Martine at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, I had council tax bill came through once, and the council tax got very confused because I live with my other half. We have for about 5 or 6 years now, and it was addressed to Thomasina. I'm like, who's that? That's not me.
That's not even close, is it?
Oh my goodness. So every episode ends with our questionnaire. They come from the Prost questionnaire, which were then adapted by Bernard Pivot and later by James Lipton for Inside the Actors Studio. And now I present my voiceover adaptation to you.
Okay.
What is your favourite word?
Home.
What is your least favourite word?
Oh, I had this the other day in a script, and it was vulnerable, because it was in the script probably 50 times, and my mouth was just not working properly that day.
Mm-hmm. It's that fee sound at the start, isn't it, as well? It's sort of like yeah. I have some speech problems, and yeah, I can't do that word. What engages you?
Music.
What disengages you?
Do you know? I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say voiceover, and the only reason is because when I'm watching TV or listening to the radio now, when there's ads on, I can't just watch the advert or listen to the advert because of what I do. I'm thinking, oh, what's he doing there, or how are they doing that sentence? Would I have done it like that? So it disengages me from the thing as a whole. And actually, it was the same when I was in bands. If I played bass in a band, I would listen to music, but I would only be able to listen to the bass guitar, because I would be thinking, oh, could I do that? Would I do it like that? And I find it's almost like what's the word? An affliction in a way. I can't appreciate things for the whole piece anymore because I'm dissecting them.
I mean, it's not a bad skill to have, to analyse something, to be able to see what are the component parts of that performance.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. Fair dues. What sound or noise do you love?
Oh. Wow, that's a really good question. What sound or not? Like individual sound, do you mean?
Yeah, any sound or any noise that you're just like, I love this.
Okay, so sometimes early in the morning I will go in the garden with my hot drink and just sit there and just listen, and it's before the world is really waking up much, but you can just hear in the distance maybe, and because it's so quiet, a train 2 miles away because it's travelling through the air, and the birds, and just the general sound of atmosphere, slight breeze, all that sort of thing. And I really enjoy that because it's it's a moment to yourself, and you can just really appreciate what's around you. My life is filled with noise and digital noise a lot of the time. So to be able to appreciate, I don't want to say real things, but the world, the outside world, there we go, because I'm inside most of the time because of what I do. But yeah, the outside world sounds of the morning, I think.
Yeah. And there is something almost mindful about it, I think. Almost, it's like you said, before the world wakes up. But for me, as an insomniac, it's also the sound of I should have gone to bed.
Yes, yes.
All right, the complete opposite question. What sound or noise do you hate?
Let's think. I don't. That's difficult because I and I don't know if it's because of what I do, but I'm, like I said, my life is filled with noise. If I'm not standing in the box talking, I'm at the desk listening to me talking, editing, and as soon as that's off, I either have music on or the radio. I have to have noise all the time. And when I'm come out of my office or studio at the end of the day, straight out, 2 kids, noise, telly, noise. If I'm cooking the dinner, I'll put the radio on. So I don't know that there's a noise that I dislike. Maybe feedback, because it means bad quality recording, bad quality audio. But again, that's a really tough question.
Yeah, that is not even my question. I just stole it. So
That's
blame
what
Bernard Pivot.
Isn't that what art is, though? Isn't it just stealing stuff and adapting it?
It is, though, isn't it? It's like even Tolkien and C.S. Lewis stole from the Bible. Brandon Sanderson and Joe Abercrombie stole from Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. The future writers are going to steal from Sanderson and Joe Abercrombie. So yeah, we're all just going to steal.
Steal, I think steal might be a hard word for it. A harsh word.
Borrow with respect.
Because I always think, if you'd never heard music before, but you were a really good guitarist, I don't know how that would work, but would you be able to form a song? You know, musicians obviously have lots of different influences, and they're not stealing. Well, some steal music, obviously, we've seen that, but most of them don't steal the music. They're just using patterns or sounds that they've heard in other songs as influences. So it's more like, taking inspiration and absorbing what they see and hear. Did I get us out of that one?
Yep, you got us out of that one. We're not going to be sued, I hope. Yes, we haven't stolen anything for the lawyers. There we go. Question 7, everyone's favourite question. What is your favourite curse word?
That is a good question. Oh, wow. Let me have a quick think. Let me scroll through them in my head. Am I allowed to say it? Will you bleep it?
No, don't bleep them. Don't bleep them.
I think there's probably 2. The first one would be shit. And I think it's just because it's probably the most used one in my repertoire of curse words. Although I try to keep them tamed now that I've got kids. Yeah. Not always possible. So that would be the most used one, I think. But my favourite one. I don't. Because there's some really bad ones, isn't there? I think probably the F word. I can't bring myself to say it. Shall I say it?
Go on.
Fuck.
Yes.
I think just because, and also it probably. I used to listen to Billy Connolly a lot when I was growing up, and he had this whole piece about the F word, and how how powerful and good it is. So I've got a lot of connotations with comedy because of that word and things as well. But it's just so adaptable. Yeah, I think. Yeah. And I think also it's lost its harshness over the years because it's probably been on TV and films more than it ever was, and it's just part of everyday life for a lot of people, and there's less people offended by that sort of thing now, I think.
Yeah, and I think also so many great things have started with just somebody saying fuck it and going to do the thing.
Yep.
Epic. Yep. I love that.
Yeah, it can be used positively and negatively, can't it?
Yeah.
I fucking hate that, or I fucking love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love positive swear words. They're just the best. What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
I actually had a thought about this the other day, and I think it would probably be linked to music because I spent so many years doing, or like you said in the intro, attempting to be a successful musician and ultimately failing. It would be something like helping young people to form relationships and not communities, but like I don't mean, when I say the word groups, I don't mean like a band, a musical group. I mean like groups of people, but using music to do that. So playing music together. So you would go into somewhere, I guess, as a practitioner and get a classroom of kids to write a song together or something like that. It's a very loose idea at the minute, but I would love to do something to bring people together with music.
That sounds amazing. And I totally hope you do that.
Why didn't I think of that before voiceover?
You do both. Nothing stopping you doing both. Yeah, just overwork yourself. I mean, that's the key to success, according to some people.
Yeah. Never sleep.
What profession would you not like to do?
Well, I'm going to say database management, because it would mean that I have failed to become a voiceover artist. So if I'm ever doing database management again, which, you know, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm too far. I'm 3 years down the line, 3 or 4 years down the line now. So it's not going to happen. But it would mean that I wake up from this cool dream.
Yeah. And final question: if you could say only one statement to any one person, what would that statement be, and who would that statement be?
So what would it be, and who would I say it to?
Yeah.
Oh. I would say it to a son. I've got two sons. I feel bad for leaving one out, but one can't talk yet.
Pick your favourite.
I'll pick the oldest because the other one wouldn't have a clue what I was going on about, and this one, to be fair, is only 5, so he might not either. But I would probably say, try things, because otherwise you might just look back in years to come, and that's why I'm so glad that when the opportunity to do something different after that employed life came along, I'm so glad that I didn't just rush back. Something told me to try something else, and now here we are, doing voiceover, running a networking group, doing podcasts with lots of amazing people, and I just don't want him to regret not doing stuff, even if it means him living out of a van, being a more successful musician than I was. I will fully endorse that, even if he's sponging off of mum and dad for a while, because I want him to experience things that other people might not have the chance to.
I can't think of a better note to end this series on than that. Do try things, and why can't all parents be like you?
Thank you.
So remind us again of your websites that you got for the networking group and your own voice acting stuff.
So the Creative Collective Networking Group, which is a networking group for people working in creative roles, anything from photography, web design to jewellery making or crocheted toilet roll holders. It's the Creative Collective Networking.co.uk, and there's a link there to book onto the events, which are all online. And my voiceover website is www.martinwhiskin.co.uk.
All right, make sure you check Martin out, and also don't forget to check out our own social media. We are on TikTok, where I still pretend that I'm in my 20s, which I still am for like a few more months, at Meets Interesting People. We're on Instagram at Tom Meets Interesting People, Twitter at Tom Meets People, and don't forget to also check out this show on Good Pods and leave us a review. You can leave us a 1-star review if you want, but I think you'd feel better leaving us a 5-star review. I think we prefer that, wouldn't we? Martin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. I really, really, really appreciate it.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me. It's always like I talk for a living, so talking more is fine by me.
There we go. Thank you so much. And we are out of here. You have just listened to an episode of Tom Meets Interesting People. If you'd enjoyed the show and would like to take part, or you know somebody who would make a great guest, please email me at tommeetsinterestingpeople@gmail.com and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Guests may provide audio content that helps to demonstrate their work. Guests have given permission for this work to be played through the use of a release form that they have signed. It is the understanding of this podcast that the material that they provide does not infringe on the copyright of others. All other rights reserved. Copyright 2022.